All right, I'm gonna double check that we have sound on. Okay, this is gonna be another one of our Instagram lives that I'm not responding to. And I actually missed the Instagram live yesterday, so apologies for that. We will make up for it next week. So I'm going out of town with my family on vacation, so I'll shoot one while I'm there and we can do a live Q&A, hang out with baby Jack. So this video is going to be about finger testing options. And so I get a lot of questions from clients and people in general when I mention high rate finger loading. People get confused by that. So I'm just going to warm up like that really quickly. I have not warmed up today, and I climbed yesterday, so I'm pretty cold, let's say. But I don't really need a big warm up for a finger training session, in my opinion. I definitely don't need the full introductory warm up of pulling, legs, fingers, pulling, legs, fingers, pushing, legs, fingers, etc. Really, I'm just trying to warm up my finger flexors. And so the high rate loads, remember, are going to be just like the regular loads on a fingerboard, except I'm going to increase the intention of each hang. And so the goal of doing that is to get the big muscle fibers activated very quickly and easily because they naturally are fast. Okay, so we're going to do some open-handed repeaters. Let's do like a 5-second hang, 2-second off, 5-second hang. So I'm going to get set up just like I would on a repeater. Feet are still on the ground. Lift fast. 3. And lift fast. Let's just do a couple seconds. I'm not sure how well you can see from the lighting in the video. It's not like a jump to a bar. Certainly a jump onto the board would be okay. I probably wouldn't do that to start. But really what I'm trying to do is get set up so I have contact with the edge and then snap into it. But I don't need to pull, I don't need to jump really. I can just load into it pretty quickly. So here we're gonna load, feet up quick. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was not counting 5 seconds, just getting some engagement. I'm not that big of a proponent of long warm-ups. Typically when I write rehab programs or training programs for people, I give them suggestions, and hopefully I'm remember to tell them that you don't really have to do the whole thing. You want to do the portions of it or a portion of it until you feel ready, and that's going to be different for every athlete. So it's really hard to know exactly how much any individual needs. I certainly know how much I need as an athlete, so I don't, so it's not going to be the same for every person, which is, I guess, the important part. So that was a 4-finger open, rapid hang, and I wasn't really counting the time on. It was about 3 seconds on, a second off, back on. No problem there. I would probably also do front 3. So front 3 open, and we'll do a set like that, and then I would do back 3 open. So let's do a front 3 open set. So I'm going to do the same thing, get set up, and down, up. So there's a front 3 set. So it's still a dead hang, and I think that's okay to do on a fingerboard in terms of the type of load, because that's more like the loads we're going to do when we're rock climbing. Today when we talk about finger training, I have about 30 minutes. We're going to differentiate the pulling from the curling or the lifting and the difference in numbers, and I'll go through and break down those numbers for everyone on this video as well, and try and identify the difference in terms of how much load I could put on my body on a fingerboard in a specific edge, or how much I would be able to pull, or maybe how much I would use on a fingerboard based on that pull. But that's to come. Let's do the back 3. So back 3, same thing. I like the back 3 hang quite a bit, actually. I like getting the pinky engaged. Good. So even that one, we've done 2 4s, 3. That was like the 3rd set, 4th set. Like I can feel it in my forearms. Like I can definitely feel muscle activity in the forearms. That's really all we're looking for, right? Especially for an outside climbing warm-up. And I also did a whole intro power warm-up with movements. So make sure you look back at that video if you haven't seen it. That is the one where I was just starting this version of the content, and it does not have a title on it. So the previous two have a title on it. This one will have a finger testing title on it. But the one that is like, I think it's this picture without me in it, that's the warm-up one. That was my rookie days. So let's do a 4-finger half on the 30 mil on the tension board. So I could drop into it, but my fingers aren't that warmed up. So we'll go get set up. Just a couple seconds. Couple seconds. Couple seconds. Couple seconds. Couple seconds. So you kind of get into like a rhythm of hang, release, kind of like a rocking motion. Feels pretty good for just loading very quickly. And as long as, I would suggest doing a few positions. If we were outside, if I was going to go outside climbing, I would absolutely grab onto the wall with my shoes on, grabbing onto the type of rock you're going to be grabbing onto, making sure your skin gets a little bit sore. That's also really important, I think. But very different than starting to climb easy terrain where I might cut my skin or might get some sort of flapper or, have something else happen. So let's do another set. Let's do it on 25 this time. So 4-finger here. Because again, with my finger training session, I am not trying to get tired. All I'm trying to do is increase recruitment to the big muscle fibers. A lot of times when I do clinics and the participants, I have them warm up to make sure that, because I don't know how warm everyone needs to be, but a lot of times I will test with them and not warm up to show that it's possible that you can still produce a lot of force without doing a lot of warm up. And in a lot of cases, the warm up that climbers do is so long that it actually reduces their session, efficiency and their session coordination because they go into it partly tired. Okay, so let's do one more set. And again, this isn't designed to be a fully comprehensive warm-up. I just wanted to do a review on the high rate loading on the fingers. So let's do it on the 20 mil, because that's as small as we're going to do for the test today. So I'm going to do a half crimp here. And this feels pretty much the same to me as a 25. And that's really because my fingers aren't very long. Okay, so hopefully that's a good review for people about high rate loading on a fingerboard. Now we're going to use the Tyndek Progressor and we're going to measure pulling, because that's another way you could warm up. I'm going to flip this though. So now I have my setup, and I'm going to grab my iPad so you all can see the measurements. Let me grab it. All right, so I've already preset this up, showed people how to get on the Tyndek Progressor. Let's see, where's my app? There it is. Okay, so we're gonna hook it up. I'm gonna search for it. It's not turned on. Gonna scan, find the Progressor. Tear it to 0, right? Because it has some weight on it. It has the flashboard on it, the tension block. So the other way that I would warm up, that I was going to do originally, was just warm up like this. I feel like that camera's high. Let me double check. Okay, that seems fine. The other way I was going to warm up is just start doing this, or start with the pulling version. But I want to show this version first. So those of you that have taken clinics from me in the past or have seen content or followed me for a while on Instagram have seen a lot more of this than this other newer version. So the goal of this live is to show you the difference between those two in terms of the numbers that at least I can produce on myself and some of the trends that I'm seeing in athletes and how much load we can do on the board as a consequence of all the passive tension that we get with that kind of training. So we're going to use the peak load here. But remember, you could do other types of testing interventions like this. You could do an endurance test like this. You could do a repeater test like this. You could do a rate of force test. And I'll show all those in another time. I don't have that much time today though. So we're going to start the test. And so let's assume that I'm not fully warmed up, because I'm probably not. And let's try and pull at 80%, 85%. So here we're going to be at a, what I say, a strong joint angle for the athlete. And athletes will know what their best position is for the most part. Like Allison Vest, hers is straight arm. Mine's not straight arm. Mine's at about 120 degrees. So usually I let the athlete choose the position that's best for them. But as you can see, like I'm doing a yielding isometric in my fingers, and most of the work that's happening is from my upper body. So let's just do a pull. So that was 124 pounds. Definitely was not 100% effort. And here's the other side. 140 pounds. So that one was a little bit harder. Pulled a little bit harder. So again, this is a method that I could warm up my finger flexors. But what's happening on the edge is as I pull, I'm trying to prevent my fingers from opening up. And if you pay attention to it when you do it, you can tell that you're like kind of opening up your fingers. That's more called a yielding isometric. It's more like an eccentric contraction. But there's no way, as you'll see, when I flip my body position and I isolate my finger flexors, I cannot produce 140 pounds of force on my finger flexors. So ultimately what I'm saying is this is not as predictive as my finger flexor strength as this other version would be. But let's do another one. So let's restart. Let's go on the left. Now I'll try a little bit harder. See if I can hit 150. 152. That was actually a pretty good guess on how much I could hit. Restart. Let's try and hit 150 on the right. $154. So, and I can hit those numbers because I'm pretty familiar with doing this kind of training over a lot of years. So it's really easy to kind of know how hard it feels. So that's pretty close. That's probably 85% of what I can hit at my peak load. And I'm kind of tired today, so let's see how close I can get to that. But if not, not too worried. So let's do a left one. Let's try hard. Let's see if I can hit 170. So for me, I weigh about 165 right now. So let's see if I can do one arm. Hang on. So I weigh 172. So by doing a hang, obviously I'm just hanging, testing my body weight, right? Let's do it on the right side. 172. So what that really shows, and that's why I put this weight right here that I have hidden. I was gonna do a max test because my max with that I think is like 187, 186, so 10 more pounds. But because I can lift my body off the ground, I would hold that weight in front of me. So if you've seen testing on my account, people will be sitting in the squat rack and they'll have a pin across their thighs with a pad, and then they'll be pulling down. So this prevents them from elevating. So essentially makes the system closed so the individual can't displace at all. Hence why I would have the weight here. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that right now and won't worry about it. So 172 on both sides. I'm heavy today, but I got all my gear on, so all good. So if we were going to do the math on that, so 172 times 2 is 344, and I weigh 172. So that's going to put my strength to weight ratio at 2.0. But I would say if I was going to do a fingerboarding workout, or if I was going to try and do some sort of max thing, but remember, when I say max, or when we refer to max strength, we're referring to that number, that 172 number. I could probably hang with that much weight added to my body for a couple seconds. I would say that's probably predictive for myself today because that probably isn't my max. My max is probably 10, 12 more pounds per side. Actually, let's try it. Now I'm curious. Curious what it is today. Let's do it. Let's go. All right, restart. See if I can hit 180. I'm pretty sure I can. All right. This one's for you, Conrad, if you're here. Nerve shots, bro. Ooh, 183. Let's go, 10 pounds more. All right, let's do it on the right. You guys hear such great noises come out of me. Say, 181. We'll call that the same. Or no, that wasn't the same. That was 176. I lied. So, let's do the math. So 176 plus 183 equals 359. So if I take that and I divide it by 0.9, so times it by 0.90, that's 323, because I'm using a little bit of a conversion factor, because that number I hit, I didn't hold it there. So if I was going to do this on a fingerboard, I'd probably use 90% of that number when I add the arms together. So if I do 323 minus my body weight, 172, 151. So my hanging on a pull-up, or a fingerboard, on a 20 millimeter edge would be plus 150 pounds, which is a ton of weight. And that just because I can do it though, does not mean that it's a helpful or a good load in my opinion anymore, based on these other numbers, okay? So that's probably a good, but notice how quick that was. So I could probably produce maybe 7-8 more pounds per side if I warmed up a little bit more, because I'm not fully warmed up, but for the sake of our purposes now, that's fine. I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to take this down. So for those of you that have home walls, having a bolt on your wall is mega helpful for all sorts of reasons. And now I'm just going to hook this to my platform, which we've seen before, and we're going to do the same test pulling up. And since we're here, let's plug Silly Goat. Steve, since I'm always rocking Silly Goat swag. Steve makes the sickest brushes around, in my opinion, but turns out his swag game is super dope too. So let me make sure that's in the frame. Aight, we still good? Okay. So here's the specifics on this test. So I'm going to write my load over here and then I'll bring you in just a second. So 151. So we did 176, 182, plus 151. So I'll show you all the math on that. We'll do a little whiteboard session after to finalize this. So I'm going to get rid of this big weight. And we're going to do the same test, but now I'm going to pull vertical. So on the Training Bit article or on the podcast I've been talking about, you've heard me describe these positions. But the 3 positions that I've used to isolate the finger flexors are with the elbow on a bench, which would be me sitting here with my elbow blocked. Maybe you can see that, maybe not. Would be me sitting here, chain above me, elbow blocked, pulling down here, pulling my finger flexors. With this example, what happens is when I pull, I lift my elbow up, so I got to pull it back down. So it still is hard to isolate fully. The other version is people go straight arm overhead. There's not really a perfect way to do it. It's always a little bit weird. The other version I've done in a squat rack, and I've seen Colin and other people do it on J hooks in a squat rack too, which seems like a pretty good option. Another option is to block the elbow like this. So if I lean over something and the gauge is hooked in front of me, and I'm pulling this way, I have the same problem because I'm pulling my elbow away and I got to pull it back down. So I think those two methods they're not that comfortable. They feel kind of weird and they're just kind of a pain in the ass to set up, to be quite honest. So the version I think is the one that I do that I think works great, and I get the same numbers with all of those. And so I think if you figure out what you're trying to test and you're not trying to cheat the test, either one will be fine. This one's really easy though. So stand over the top of this. And so the width of my feet really is just defined by how long this chain is. And so I tend to stand in a tripod stance just to eliminate any pushing from my legs. But that's a little bit too high. You can see how my arm's bent. So I'm going to drop this. Another reason that the chain is the bomb. Let's go 2 lines down. Here. I don't love that. I'm going to go up 1. So what we're looking to do with this setup is I'm going to have my shoulders level, they feel pretty level, and my arm underneath this, kind of in the center of my body, and then I'm just going to try and pull my body into the ground. So if the intention, if you've used a no-hang device, and the intention is always to lift something, you're going to want to and then lift it up. But that's not the point. The point here is to stand tall and pull my body into the ground just by curling my fingers. So in this context, I can't really hang on my fingers because I'm only pulling my body downwards, right? So that's a type of concentric movement. So if you can see that difference, if I could go here and I could actually curl my fingers, that's kind of the intention of what I'm doing. However, I get a lot of questions from people, well, why don't we just use a really heavy load and just curl the fingers and see what max load you can tolerate? That is more of a concentric movement, but that's kind of stressful on the pulleys because the inside of the pulleys, the part that touches the tendon, has little ridges. And so the reason that we can produce so much force on our finger flexors is when we contract, those ridges lock to the tendon. And so if I lock those ridges to my tendon with a bunch of load and I'm trying to slide it against there, that's probably a way to make your pulleys really sore. So I don't do that as an intervention. And that's not, it's not like how we use the fingers on the climbing wall anyways. So I'm trying to move that closer. Okay. So I know Conrad's like, shut up and do the test. Prove it. Oh, because I don't have too much time. All right, gotta hurry. All right, so let's restart this. So now we're gonna do the same thing. Restart. Remember, big numbers on the other test. 182 on the left, 176 on the right. Let's see what my finger flexors can do. It's kind of twisted, but that's okay. A whopping 98 pounds today. And I think my max for this is like 111 when I was fresh. So that was 98, right side. Ow, that's sore on my middle finger. I was doing a project, and not sore in the sense that my pulley's sore, just like the distal joint. Doing a project yesterday that requires you to like 2-finger hit this whole thing and hang it on. So that was pretty weak actually. That was 80 pounds. Let's try that one again now. Okay. So 98 pounds again. So, 93 pounds, I lied, I look like I ate. So now let's go to the whiteboard and talk about the differences here. Let me talk about those first actually. So let's just call 98 both sides. So now I'm 196. And remember on the other side, or the other version, 182 plus 176, 358. So where's my marker? So let me move this over here. This time I'm not going to move the light just so it doesn't glare too bad. So if I add those together, right, this is the pull test. So this is pulling. 176 and 182 is 358. Multiply that by 0.90. And right, that is a conversion for, we'll call this the hang conversion. Because that was this number was my peak force. Assuming you can see me. Because this number was my peak force, so we're going to convert it. So if I do 358 times 0.90, 322 minus my body weight equal the plus 151 added to my body. So that would be my estimated maximum for a couple seconds. Fingerboarding added load, 151 pounds. Remember though, that is an eccentric. We'll call it eccentric-like contraction. So if we do the recent test, 98 and 93. 98 plus 93 equals 191. So we'll do 98, 93, 191. I probably do not need to make that a conversion, although let's call this one lifting. I would say I don't need to make that a conversion because that's a concentric movement. So something that's important to remember is even though that's a concentric movement, that amount, that the active tension that I get in that movement, which is my recruitment, will have passive tension tied to it when I use a fingerboard. So if I was going to use a fingerboard based on these loads, I would take that number, subtract my body weight, which is a measly plus 20 pounds. And I think I'm off there. I think it was plus 21. No, it was actually plus 19. Yeah, we'll round it up. Plus 20 pounds. And those numbers are off today because I'm tired. I think the last time I did that, my numbers were like plus 60 pounds. So because it was like 120 pounds there. So I think my fingers are pretty tired today, which is actually important to point out because how could I still produce this much load, which is a little bit below my max, but that's still a shit ton of weight to hang on my body, 151 pounds. Because eccentric muscle contractions, they're not negatively influenced by metabolic fatigue in the same way that concentric muscle contractions are. So my contractile velocity will be dropped with fatigue, as well as my concentric force production. But the eccentrics, because the muscles are so efficient, they will be able to tolerate a whole bunch of force still, but they're not really it's not as easy to use as a fatigue measure. So essentially what that means is I could still hang with my max load, even if it was a little heavier than this, but that doesn't mean that it's a good idea in my opinion, because this number shows that my fatigue is higher than I would assume it is if I use that number. So that's another one of the subtle but really important differentiators and differences between an eccentric load and a concentric type of muscle action. So there's other videos that I will shoot that will, use that as a training intervention. So today, if I know my testing numbers, 98 and 93 is low, right? So if I did my percentage, I think my highest was 113 times, let's do 98 divided by 113, 86%. So I'm low 14%. So my force is down 14% from my baseline force. I would say that's too low. I wouldn't strength train my fingers today. Because in this case, I'm not really getting high threshold motor unit recruitment. What I'm just getting is a little bit of recruitment, but I'm definitely not getting more recruitment than I would if I was fresh. Because I want that 113 number to go to 114. Want it to be 116. Would love it to be 130, right? Would love it to be 145 like Allison's number. But based on this, that simple test, I warmed up, tested my fingers, that number's low, and I would probably try a few more times if I was interested in training. I'm just doing this for the sake of the video, but if I was interested in training, I would try a few more times. If I can't beat that number, then I'm definitely not finger training today. I leave for the day. That's my that's my session for the day. Although it's very short. You cannot get that same information from a fingerboard. It's just not possible, right? So that's another really important distinction. But I will shoot more videos in the future about how I could use this intervention as a workout. Because if I'm going to do a workout and I'm going to do a couple repetitions, just like a strength training routine. So if I did, and this is a common prescription I give people, 5 sets of 2 to 4 reps. I'm going to do set 1. I do 3 reps above this number, so above 90% or hopefully above 100%, 3 reps. Then I'm going to rest 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. Then I'm going to do set 2 is 3 reps, set 3, 2 reps, set 4, 1 to 2 reps. So really I'm going to use this number, this force number, as a guide to how long my session is and to how many reps I'm doing, going to track that progression. Without question, that is a better and a safer and a more applicable and physiologic adaptation than a fingerboarding protocol would be, without question, especially for a lot of you that are really trained. So hopefully that gives you a basic understanding of the differences there. That's really what I wanted to show today, and I'm out of time. So hopefully that helps people understand the difference between testing methodologies. And then again, I will try and do a live Q&A this weekend sometime or early next week. So stay tuned for that.